and just enjoy the warm whir of the air conditioning unit over top of me. And wow, that seemed loud today. Was that just me? Was it? It was loud, right? It seemed louder than usual. Welcome, champions, to the official Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms weekly live stream. My name is Dylan, and I am coming to you live from the green streaming closet at Codename Entertainment, located in beautiful Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Before I begin, a huge shout out to the D&D and Wizards of the Coast teams for graciously hosting us here each week. It's super awesome to be here. I don't know what to add to it. I mean, I say that every time, but it's like, it really is awesome to be here. Yeah, there's a lot going on. And thanks, Kitty Kitty Big Bot. I like this hat too. I figured I'd try it out to see if it was a stream-worthy hat, see how it looked on camera in here, and I think it actually blocks enough light from my face that my face is starting to look weird. The color is like, I don't know. Maybe I can work on that more. But yes, welcome, welcome, welcome. I am going to get this game rolling in a moment. I have a sort of placeholder Companions of the Hall formation going in Mad Wizard just to see what it's like. But I figured I might instead boot up one of the variants in a moment. And maybe I'll turn on some sound to hide the sound of the AC unit overhead, because it's just, oh, that's not quite loud enough. I'll go 2%. So yeah, the pop-up came in handy for you once. Yeah, I just noticed it. Is sound and background off? Oh yeah, it is. There we go. Cool, because I need to be able to see chat too. Welcome, Hikuin, Slatterosen, Baron Stromgard, Garwar, Silisa, Classic 727, D. Brunsden, Humplehack, Koani, and of course, Lauren, Obo Crazy. Hello there. Hi, the .dk, Carnage Driven. Okay, I don't know how to pronounce some of your names, but Arkan Sunseeker, welcome. Yeah, this is me. This is the weekly Idle Champion stream. We're gonna bring David, our co-founder and our front-facing design guy in about an hour to talk about things, but until then, it's just you and me. We went over quite a lot of stuff over the last few weeks, both in the time that I was gone at PAX and Chris was running the stream, to last week when we announced Binwin Plays, had Binwin, cartoon Binwin, on as a guest, and Satine dropped by the office to talk about some stuff too. I don't know how many of you caught the Reddit Q&A yesterday. Some of you may even have missed parts of it, because Reddit does a very good job of not always having every post make it through. I noticed a few of my responses were removed, a few questions were removed, so I just kind of want to touch on a bit of that really quickly, especially the sort of like the rough weekly rundown that the rough roadmap, if you will, that I've been posting, because there was a lot of information in it. Some of it people knew, some of it was just released here and there. For Q&A 41, obviously, I didn't share anything about the big three updates, the placeholder names we have for the offline gold gain update, the tanking and healing update, and the champion balance update. What I can say is that the discussion about them is ongoing, and one of the reasons that we don't do something on a regular basis, like tweak a champion right outside the gate, or we notice that there's a problem with one and we kind of push it back, is they kind of get sucked into these individual updates, right? So that includes actually the release schedule for upcoming champions. Some of them are slated to be before or after these, which is to say that yes, we are working on them. If you compare us to a major studio like Blizzard or Bungie with their updates to Destiny 2, I mean, it took them nearly a year, 10 months to a year to get a lot of the changes in that players were asking for since Destiny 2 launched. And while we don't take quite that much time, because we're a pretty fast-moving studio here in terms of what we can accomplish, some of these updates are big. The offline gold gain, I suspect, will be the first one to get completed, but that's just, as an outside observer, that's not an official word. But the tanking and healing one marks a pretty substantial attempt to make a meaningful change to the game and parts of how it plays. And it could take some time. So, it's just Chris working on most of this stuff. in terms of the balancing, and then it will be Chris and Justin and other people helping out once it gets a little further along. So yeah, please bear with us. I can confirm that we're definitely working on it. We also talked a bit about upcoming champions. Obviously, Wolfgar arrived yesterday. Finally, the final member of the Companion of the Halls, the son of Bjornagar, and the protagonist of the Crystal Shard, back when he was the protagonist and Dritz wasn't. So you can see my Companions of the Hall formation here. Oh, I forgot Bruner. God. Oh, I'm so used to Deacon. Rally. Let's get Bruner in here. My bad. What kind of Companions of the Hall formation is this without, you know, arguably one of the most integral members, and I think the first one that was actually introduced. So, I'll just save this to slot 3 in here. Yeah, I'll overwrite whatever formation that was. Alright, now it's very companion-y. And I use the plus damage increase on Wolfgar, because why not? He actually seems really, really, really good. We just need to... I think we need to do something about Dritz, but that's me. So, what's coming up? We have, through different varieties and through different means and at different times, announced that last week on stream we talked about how Valanya Umvarar, I'm totally pronouncing that wrong and not quite as in such a sultry way as Satine does, but Satine's character from Sirens of the Realms, actually a character that she has been playing since she was 12, is coming to the game, is in our development pipeline, as well as Paulton Seppa, Nate Sharp's character from Dice Camera Action, will eventually make his appearance, completing the Waffle Crew, although he is not one of the next probably 2, maybe even 3 champions coming. And people who are at PAX West, who might have stopped by our booth and seen Adam doing some drawing of an upcoming champion would have caught the initial pass for Neris Cathan, who I think was created by Jim Zub for Shadows of the Vampire, but I could be wrong. But yeah, another Baldur's Gate hero coming to the game. We don't have any release dates for any of these characters because there's kind of an ongoing shuffle depending on a lot of other factors that I can't talk about. Which is to say that the next champion... who is the next champion after Wolfgar? You know, I'm not quite clear on that yet, actually. There's been a bit of a shuffle, so I guess we'll see. So that's coming up. Obviously, Bright Swords dropped yesterday, and players wondering when we're going to have our next content update, just so they can, you know, plan out how they're going to approach things in advance and see what they have time for. Bright Swords is going to run for the next 11 days or so. And then the update immediately following the ending of Bright Swords is going to be another content update. I dropped a hint, and it's just to say that it expands upon one of our permanent campaigns, that content update. And then following that update, which is, let's see, 3 weeks from now, will be 3 weeks from maybe 3-4 weeks from now. Beginning of October will be our first year 2 event. The second iteration of High Harvestide, and planning is well underway for that one. There's there are a lot of ongoing discussions about what we can do to spice it up, do things a little bit different than we have in our previous titles, and I'm excited to see it. And yes, there will be a second champion, and yes, you will be able to unlock Stokey if you've missed her, and do all the requisite achievements, etc. So, yes, that is coming. And then finally, the other thing that I kind of want to touch on before we get into a Q&A, at least if you have any other questions to add, the topic of familiars, which we receive quite a lot of feedback about. I'm glad people are so passionate about them and they're so interested in them and they can see as much potential in them as we do. Obviously, we just added another chunk of familiars to the game, in both the Mimic for the anniversary event and the Stinky DLC pack that we did for charity, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But then we also added another round of familiars, both to the in-game store and to the gem shop. So there are a lot of familiars now, which, you know, like right now I'm currently using all of them to level champions, including Strix, because I always use Stinky on Strix, and same with Armored Juniper on Evelyn. You can't... Where else would you put Armored Juniper, honestly? So they're kind of Familiars are an ongoing discussion, and there will be continue to be an evolution of their functionality. We have some other ideas for things that we'd like to do. But yes, feel free to continue to give us feedback on it. We get a lot of the same feedback over and over again, but that's totally okay, because we want to, it further reaffirms design decisions if we get a lot of feedback about it. The most common one, I think, right now being able to save familiar formations. Whether that's tied to the way we currently save them or something else, I'm not sure yet. But it's made us to the point where we're talking about it in our morning meetings. So I don't know what. There's no ETA for it, but it's a feature we're looking at doing. So yeah, that's me rambling for a bit. David's going to be on in 50 minutes. Do you have any questions for me? Oh, I see Erica. So while I'm doing this, I also want to do a shout out to Erica for the start of the stream instead of waiting to the end. Erica co-produces this alongside me at Codename. She's the one who is grabbing questions out of chat as they come in and putting them into a document for me to look at, because I can't always pay as close of attention to that as I would like. And so shout out to Erica. So Baron Stromgard wants to know, wants some elaboration on exactly what changed with Golden Palm. So Stokey's Golden Palm debuff was never intended to stack, but it did. So if she hit the same monster more than once, you'd get extra gold on top of it. But only the... so basically in specific cases where she was hitting monsters multiple times, we wanted to make sure that she didn't do that anymore. So it was an adjustment. Drow Fighter, 11,500 feathers. How many contracts did you use? I used a ton of them. I wanted to make sure that at the start of the stream I could pull up any variant for the adventure if I wanted to. So I mean, I have tons of contracts. So I probably used 100 or something. I don't know. I used just a ton of small bounty contracts. Giant Dwarf. I find it rather amusing that you can field both the companions and the Waffle Crew at the same time currently. That is interesting, isn't it? Of course, then you wouldn't be able to have Strix and Minsk in the same party, and we all know how important that is. Nameless King 95. Is there a plan to tune Year 2 champions higher than Year 1 champions, similar to in Crusaders of the Lost Idols? So, as I understand it, it's kind of unavoidable that you will have some level of power creep, and this is Dylan explaining it more than Justin or Dave, who would probably articulate it in a much more specific way. But basically, because you are always earning gear for your core champions, the core, there was 12 to start, and then you add Hitch and Dritz and Azaka, so there's 15 core champions now. They're always increasing in power as you play, because you're always earning chests, whether they're silver or gold, and event champions, as they come in later and later into the game, are going to start off basically further and further behind, because, I mean, I wouldn't consider myself among the most active players. I have a lot of dev privilege. I get a lot of extra items and stuff, but like my Bruner is still rocking decent item levels, the 200-ish range for a bunch of them. And, that makes it really hard for a champion like Deacon to compete right away, theoretically. Obviously, Deacon is in some ways superior to Bruner because he has a categorically better buff if he's at max stacks, and he can speed up your formation, so a lot of players jumped on him right away. But what we don't want is for it to be an obvious choice which one is better every time. Ideally, there is some choice upon which character you're picking, because then you can try out different types of formations, and that's not even including whether or not you bring gear into it. So Year 2 champions, or just event champions who come in later and later into the game, they're starting with a bigger and bigger kind of like just further and further behind, I guess is a better way of putting it to start. So design-wise, they have to be tuned to be as close as they can be to competitive right out of the gate. So that tends to lead to something like, to power creep. So right now, the thought process behind it is not that we want Year 2 champions to just be categorically better across the board. So every time you get one, like, oh, screw Stokey, I'm going to use the Year 2 High Harvestide character forever. And I don't know if it's actually a replacement for Stokey, but you understand what I mean. So we're just going to continue to try and balance them to be on as close to an even playing field as we can. A Giant Dwarf suggestion. Year 2 formations holding 11 champions. I don't know. I mean, that would kind of blow up a lot of our balance, wouldn't it? Like, you look at a lot of good 10 champion formations already. Like maybe you use a 10 champion Birdsong formation, being able to have Catti-brie or Minsc and Zorbu for that formation, like it's another few orders of magnitude. How many more areas is that? Like 40 more areas you'd be able to get through. So we take the question of whether or not we would have 11 or possibly 12 champion formations really seriously, because it would mark such a massive increase in player power levels. So you know, I'm not saying it'll never happen, but it's not something we're looking at the moment. Magenta shirt. Which familiar will Nordum the Modron get? So many Nordum fans. Ever since we did the Great Modron March, and revealed to the player base that yes, we like Planescape Torment, and we thought that module was awesome, and it's legit 5e canon, so let's do it. Yeah, Nordum. You know, you're not going to make a note about Nordum the Modron, because you know, we can always add it to our list. Counted. When you do High Harvest Tide 2.0, excuse me, I have a burp coming and it's really bugging me. Will Stokey and the new character use the same favor? For instance, will the favor you earn getting Stokey count towards your gold find for the second character? As I understand it, we're intending to use the same favor for both. However, because we haven't announced anything official related to Year 2 events yet, take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of this stuff can still change. Like, our pipeline includes a lot of stuff that gets planned out in advance, but the nitty-gritty of Year 2 events could still change between now and early October when that event comes out. So, yeah. Take it with a grain of salt for now. Lou Wolfskin, the reroll events will work like variants. Does that mean you can unlock? Yes, you will be able to unlock both Stokey and the new champion. Yeah, but the finalized way that that's going to look like isn't done yet. So I look forward to talking about that in probably 2 weeks, maybe. But yeah. Siley said, will Azaka Part 2 be the last major adventure in Tomb, or will there be other large ones? Yes, there will be more. A permanent campaign is a permanent campaign. Like, just because, spoilers, and if you don't know Tomb of Annihilation, or you haven't played through it as a board game, sorry, as a TRPG yet, or you haven't played through it through the game, just cover your ears for like the next few seconds. But going through the Tomb of the Nine Gods, defeating Acererak, and destroying the Soulmonger was the end only of the initial like main story campaign that we built for Tomb of Annihilation. There is a lot more on Chult that we haven't touched. And we will be seeing more of it. MSK with X's on either end. Are other champions ever going to be viable, or is it always going to be the same bunch? I think you know what? So I suppose it depends on what you're doing. Like, if you are comparing gameplay at the highest level, which is to say, like, you've completed, you know, Azaka's Procession Part 2, you complete every variant, and like, you have E16 plus favor. You know, the further and further you get into that like narrow slice of the high end players, like the group of champions that you can use gets narrowed. But there's a lot more that's viable close to that point, just not at that point. I think we've been doing a better job of striking that balance. Mathematically, for any given situation, there's always going to be one ideal setup for you, and that's like, to a degree, that's impacted by gear, but it's also, yes, champion balance is a part. All that said, yeah, we're working on a more all-encompassing champion update down the line that, you know, I know it doesn't feel like it's a priority. It is a priority. It's just, it's kind of it's a big thing to work on and to tune and to test out. And we're a small team. That's why we progress at the pace we progress at. And then a lot of people wonder why, hey, you guys put out a lot of content. Why won't you stop and fix the things that you know that aren't working, etc. But because we're a free-to-pay title, free-to-play, we have to release content at a pace that's fast enough to keep players, and for those that do spend, keep players spending. That's what keeps the lights on. That's why you can see my face. I'm not in the dark in this closet. And we kind of need... our content pipeline is designed around keeping this viable. So yeah. Colored Beauty. Can you elaborate on why it is important to have Strix and Minsc in a party together? I can. So, when we first started talking to Holly Conrad about bringing Strix into the game, the point that she returned to every time was how excited she was that you could have, in a more or less canonical way, because this is an official Dungeons and Dragons title, although I wouldn't consider this like printed TRPG book canon, because we do stuff a little different. But like this is a Dungeons and Dragons game, it's licensed. Holly was incredibly excited at the idea that her character would be in the same party as Minsc, whom she loved Baldur's Gate. I don't know how many of you caught the announcement at PAX West, but Holly and the rest of the Waffle crew have all done character portrait and voiceover packs for all the Beamdog titles that are on Steam. I'm not sure when that's coming out, but they're like, Holly is extremely passionate about it, and she was very excited about it. So at one point, we were going to have her swap with Minsc, and we actually stopped and made sure that that Strix was in a higher slot, so that you could have Strix and Minsc in the same party. So yeah, that's kind of the running thing. It's not that it's important from a gameplay perspective or anything, so much as Holly mentioned it, and we're like, okay, yeah, let's do that. And so far, so far so good. Everybody wants to be in the same party as Minsc too. It's Minsc is popular. What can I say? Magenta shirt, 15 core champions. The focus on the core blessing says 12 core champions. What is correct? Oh, so that's my bad. That's me mixing my terminologies because there's a couple different ways of looking at it. I called them core champions because you get all their loot from the same gold chests. But technically, the only core champions are the 12 that launched in each individual slot, which does not include Hitch or Azaka or God, my brain. I'll remember it later. Hitch, Azaka, and God, Dritz. God. Anyways, so technically the 12 core champions are only the core champions. I see that chat. It's funny because there's like a 6 or 7 second delay in a chat, and I see like boom, like 7 people post Dritz like 7 seconds after I finish saying that. But yeah, so my bad. I should be referring to them as Evergreen Champions, in that Evergreen Champions are the ones that have loot coming out of the gold chests. Let's see. Justin P. Sluter. Question. What are the chances of more bench slots for champions more powerful and expensive than Arkan and Zorbu? So there are a lot of characters who are categorically at a power level far beyond what we've currently got for our 12 bench slots. But that being said, we want to kind of fill out these ones before we do something like adding more. It's a pretty big change. You think about how much favor you require in order to be able to buy your entire party in the first area of an adventure. Getting access to a slot 13 or 14 or whatever champion, like those are pretty massive orders of magnitude more gold in terms of cost. So we may get there. But we may choose to do something different. We're not quite sure yet. But it could happen, I guess, is the thing. I know that's a non-answer, Justin, but it's the best I can do with that one. Let's see. Baron Stromgard. Having recently played High Harvestide through a time gate to get Stokie, I found the dialogue a bit light compared to newer events. Will the dialogue be augmented for Year 2? Yeah, I can spoil that. We are looking at our dialogue as one of the things we look at for our Year 2 events. I think it was... I'm trying to remember which event was the first one that Scott Fitzgerald Gray wrote, because that marked a more consistent tone and shift in our writing, because we had David do some of the writing, we had Justin do some of the writing, and we had another writer and voice actor who some of you may know from other games, named Jacob Burgess, also do some of our writing, before we finally settled on a tone and a way to write that we were really happy with. And yeah, one of the things we're going to be looking at with year 2 events is, oh, how does the dialogue work? Should we add another line or two here or there? Like, we may make some changes. I'm not going to promise that that's going to happen, but it's something that we're considering. What about smoothing leveling so some characters do not lag behind? For example, Naeli. I'm not sure I understand. Like, are you finding your Naeli lags behind? Like, Naeli has one of the best scaling health pools. Actually, I think the best scaling health pool. So Naeli is basically viable forever. Do you mean like in terms of DPS? Because the further you get in the game, the more that it becomes about focusing all of your buffs and powers on getting one DPS as high as possible. So if that's what you're referring to, then yeah, eventually everybody else other than your pure DPS who you're trying to get powerful will start to lag behind. But yeah, is there something else? Royal Gentleman, Dragon Bait coming? Question mark. I don't know. Have we talked about that yet? I don't know if we've talked about that yet. I'm going to go ahead and say maybe. King Lemming, will we be doing more with Barovia? Absolutely. Silisa, is Golden Palm tied to a timer now? Does it expire after a set duration? That's a good question. I'm going to make a note about that because I am unclear on that. Will there be new achievements with year 2 events? That is the plan. Herp McDerp with 3s instead of E's. I have just one question. Do you use any product for your beard? It looks perfectly coiffed and healthy. No, I don't. This is my beard. I wash it. Yeah. I haven't had the need to use beard oil like some people I know, but you know, that's always an option. But yeah, I have nice hair. I have hair that people tend to be jealous of. It's healthy, nice hair. That's really all I got. Let's see. Anders Pow. Are you considering weekly challenges or something similar, like Hearthstone's Tavern Brawl or Diablo's Rift Challenge? Would be a fun and addictive way to earn chests. Hopefully, event chests, champions, faster out of season gearing. Well, somebody else likes Blizzard games. I like Blizzard games too. We have considered the idea of dailies and weeklies and stuff like that. It's kind of just it's one of those things that ties into a pretty big system. Like, for us to do something like that, that's a serious amount of work that probably several people would have to put in of a number of cycles in order to do. So I can't comment too much on it, except to say that we have definitely talked about it. We're definitely looking at ways to incorporate some of those ideas, but like there's none of it is in any kind of finalized state, so there isn't really anything I can share about those ideas at this time. So just following up on that Naeli question, I mean, in terms of Naeli's character level, I'm not sure I follow. Like, all the champions have different sort of curves in terms of costs and how things work. Some of it was chosen specifically to be a little bit different or random, just to vary things up a bit. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure I find that Naeli's character level ever lags behind. One thing I do that perhaps you don't is in the settings, because I use scientific notation, I tend to keep everybody leveled to roughly a similar level of cost in their levels. So maybe that will help you out, because I've never found that Naeli lags behind Sidhart. So I'm not saying it doesn't for you, but I just yeah, it seems like a little bit of a different issue than something that I regularly experience. Okay. Oh, my chat thing is bumping around. Mia Skull. As a somewhat newer player, I run into the difficulty level problem that it says easy, but should be deadly, and vice versa. Will this be resolved anytime soon? So we do plan to resolve it. I should follow up on that, because that's been an ongoing issue for a while now. It's definitely one of those things that when we categorize our priorities, the things where the you know, something is on fire are tend to be the ones that we approach. And because we're a small enough team, that means that our priorities list is constantly shuffling things around, and so things like this kind of get pushed down. But it is something that we want to approach because nobody likes starting an adventure that should be easy and then doesn't end up being easy. As I understand it, right now it only looks at how much favor you have before it makes that determination, and that's incorrect because there are other things at play. So it will be resolved. I don't know if I can promise soon, but I hope that it's soon. Drought Fighter. Did you get a bad haircut that you put on a hat indoors? No. I am actually just was lazy and put on a hat instead of gelling my hair. I actually really like my haircut. I mean, it doesn't look great when I do this. Not really doing justice for Crystal, my hairdresser, but she does an amazing job. So if you ever need to get your haircut in Victoria, BC, Canada, go to Victory Barber and ask for Crystal. Anyways, Meldon, what will you do to address the fact that a new player will be far behind in terms of progression? The time gate is nice to unlock some heroes, but not enough for gear these heroes. With more events and more heroes added, it will become harder and harder to catch up. Do you plan something for this? Well, I mean, yes, a lot of players have found Strix or Birdsong to be by far their best DPS. And yes, a lot of players use characters like Barrowen to push much further. But Jamila is still a phenomenal DPS. So if you're just starting out, like, it tends to be that Minsc is your best DPS for a while until you reach a high enough favor level to regularly get to Jamila. And then Jamila is an amazing DPS. You know, I don't know if she's exactly on par with Strix right now because that tends to change with champion levels, but she's not far off it. So other than events like Azaka's Procession and, you know, like the sort of the variants that come out that are kind of completing them requires a, you know, like fairly geared party and a number of blessings. Yeah, you should be able to complete all the content, and you'll eventually get there. You just kind of got to work at it. Can Boo be a champion or maybe a familiar? Well, actually, Boo is a familiar. He is the most expensive familiar at 70,000 gems. So when you get 70,000 gems, which I sure don't have yet, you can unlock Boo. Let's see. Delverton. The speed pots are amazing and evil. I love the wood chipper effect when you use them, but hate how slow the game feels without them. Yeah, I would use them sparingly. I used a number of them on stream last week so I could get the max movement speed, and like I honestly found it almost headache inducing to watch because it was just going so quickly, and it was very distracting to both Satine and I. So that's why I'm using the speed potion free version right now. But man, they allow you to like they allow you to do some pretty cool stuff. You know, and they allowed some players to briefly exploit the game, which luckily we fixed immediately because it was horrific. But yeah, speed pots are. We're glad you like them. We're glad to make it so that there are more reasons to open chests and get these things. And yeah, thank you for the feedback. Oh, Twitch Mithril. Can we get a list of which variants have alternate dialogue to look out for? No, I'm not going to give you that. First of all, we haven't done anything like that. I just said that it's something that we're looking at. Yeah. That's not a, yeah, it wasn't a promise to a feature that we're definitely going to do. It was more that, like, are we going to look at our dialogue? Yeah, we're going to look at it. And, like, there are some other things that may have to change. Like, we've come out with a lot of new tech in the last year, including things like armored enemies, which we know players love. But there were enemies before that that probably should have been armored, so maybe we'll give them armor kind of stuff, right? Like, quality of life stuff, making sure that other parts of the game are up to date. And that may include some dialogue tweaks, but it's not something that we're definitely going to do all over. Let's see. Thunder Numal, would you be interested in having an in-game chart of which upgrades are available at what level, rather than the next upgrade only? That's an interesting bit of feedback. So we've had a lot of different feedback around champion levels. You know, like, because if I click on Stokey right now, who has purchased nothing, it's like, no upgrades unlocked. All you can see is their next damage upgrade. And a lot of players have expressed a desire to be able to click on a character and just see what their upgrade tree looks like. So, I'm trying to remember what our definitive answer is on that. Like, we're not done our UI tweaks. In fact, no, I can't spoil any of that stuff. We're not done with our UI. There are some other iterations and some other things we want to do. So, yeah, I'll just take that feedback along. Mighty Moyan, what's your question? Can we get the Dragonlance characters ported into the series? I would love Huma or Raceland. I'm a big fan of Raceland Majir myself. However, this is the Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms, not the Idle Champions of Krynn, so the chances of that happening are real slim. It's not impossible, but real slim. Will the texture breaks and seams in older events be tweaked to be seamless before you're out of early access? That's another one of the things that we're looking at in terms of, you know, where we have issues, because, you know, a lot of this stuff was about making sure that we over the past year was like getting up to speed on our content system, being able to get everything done, you know, developing a work pipeline for the game and making sure that all the artists can handle it and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's a lot of moving parts that, like, we finally got this engine running in a way that we'd like, and so now it's time to take a look back at some of this stuff. And yeah, some of our older events, there were seams, like just where the art didn't quite line up, and yeah, that's one of the things on our list to look at. Cromir, any chance for a bench shuffle? For example, being able to have Minsc and Catti-brie in the same party. That's an interesting idea. The real challenge being how you balance different characters. Like, never mind Minsc and Catti-brie. What about having Barrow-in and Tyrell? Because Tyrell's a pretty darn good buffer. So, you know, being able to do some of that stuff might blow up our balance in a really significant way. So I don't know that we will do that. But I can say that we have considered that kind of stuff. Does Catti-brie's Mark for Death only trigger once per enemy? I don't know. I'm going to pass that along to the dev team and see if I can get an answer. Darth Detailed. Oh, excuse me. Are time gates replacing events? Will we be able to revisit events as an option for time gates to get the achievements? No, time gates are just intended as another way for you to earn a decent chunk of favor, possibly unlock a champion you've missed, and then if you have, to earn a couple of chests for them to just get them some more gear. That's kind of like they're kind of like a stopgap in trying to help you catch up, allowing you to get a super powerful champion like Barrow-in or Strix, if you miss them, if you miss their events, if you join the game after I think Strix came out end of March or April. So yeah, they're not replacing it; they're just there meant to help out, which is one of the reasons why the time gates naturally open in between events. Herb McDurr, will we ever see Elminster in the game for any of the events or as a future champion? Elminster has been in the game already. As for whether or not he's a future champion, who knows? Elminster is pretty busy doing whatever it is that super powerful wizards do. Nomad84, can you give any background for the decision to change the synergy between potions of speed and the expired potions of fire breath? Since expired fire breath potions are a finite resource, it seems like the problem would fix itself over time. Was it a matter of too many people having too many expired potions? Is there a general design philosophy the team sticks to when considering changes that affect strategies in which some players have already taken advantage of? It was a massive exploit. I don't mind saying. When we did a test, I did a test just to try to see it out, and I did not use my fire breath potions efficiently for the test, but using enough potions of speed to reach the maximum of 10 times speed, with 3 fire breath potions, like three huge expired fire breath potions, 365 areas cleared. That's crazy. That is so much. Like, if you think about what a player could have done if they let their game get to their wall and then did that, like if their wall is 300, oh, they're in the 650s. It was just like it was absolutely, it was a crazy amount of what you could do, which is why we nerfed it. I mean, first of all, I mean, there's a reason we took them out of the game to begin with, because you could do way too much with them. They shouldn't be in game, and we didn't take them away from anybody. So players stockpiled. Some players stockpiled a bunch of them, but yeah, it's problematic, which is why it was changed right away, because players still do that. Yeah, it was a bit much. I mean, you know, they were never considered when we. Well, I mean, Twitch Mythril, really, they could reach any level. Like, if it's an adventure that didn't have armored enemies, like Mad Wizard, like what I'm doing right now, they could just drop out 6 familiars and just blaze their way as far as they can while the potion was still active. So if you had a whole bunch of them, it just keep going. So yeah, it was a significant problem that we made sure we fixed as quickly as we could once we were aware of it. Hawker and Co. With the father and son variant, and building off some of the other questions going out right now, will we be getting more variants, events, weekly adventures where otherwise impossible parties can be used? For example, the Minsc and Caddy Brie pulling around in a preset party with maybe a few others for maximum weirdness. Without spoiling anything, we can say that we got a lot of feedback about Caddy alone, which led us to believe that, okay, we're onto something here. Players really like being able to do something fun and unique and different with, you know, one champion. So a Caddy Brie focused adventure was something that we really enjoyed putting together. And yeah, we do intend to take these ideas further. I don't know about weekly adventures or like more, you know, specific variants and stuff coming out for it, because a lot of that stuff isn't planned yet. But will we continue to do things like this? Yes, absolutely. Baron Stromgard. Will we be able to complete event achievements, for example, event variants and free play to level 150, 175 for first year events we missed in year 2? Ones we cannot finish through time gates. Yes. Yeah. So to reiterate, year 2 events, you will be able to complete anything that you did not complete in year 1 in the year 2 event. You know, actually, now that I think about it, we're probably going to be answering that question right through up to and including when the year 2 events start and for a while afterwards, so I should get used to it. But yeah, you will be able to do it all. Zapan28, Dylan, how are you enjoying the new book? We have had, we've had our physical copy of Dragon Heist for just a couple of days, but we had a blueprint version, sort of, and a PDF of it before it went to print for quite some time now, because, you know, we have to develop adventures and stuff in advance. I love the new book. The biggest reasons why tie into the fact that, like, it does a really remarkable amount of world building for Waterdeep in ways that I don't recall ever happening with any other cities or anything prior. You know, you have things like the laws of Waterdeep in there. You have information about all these different factions. You know, there's a lot going on, and it gives you a lot to work with. Like the toolbox that is Waterdeep Dragon Heist, like the toolbox that it gives DMs and players, but mostly DMs to take players through is seriously awesome. Might be my favorite 5e adventure book so far. And then on top of that, the campaign being designed around having the option, I mean, you don't have to do this because you can do anything you want in your D&D campaign, but 4 distinct, really well envisioned and fleshed out and thought out and crafted and etc. Villains, or better phrase as antagonists, it's wonderful. I mean, heroes are only ever as good as the villains that they fight. I mean, you know, you can kill rats in the sewer for so long, and like you can level up to level 2 or whatever, but it's like it doesn't feel heroic. But the the forces that you are up against in the campaign, assuming you follow the book, and I don't want to spoil too much about it, but like they're awesome. Like they are really good villains or good antagonists. So I think it's awesome. We have started a game in the office that we haven't been able to play because we have several people out this week. We're actually like, it's almost like a skeleton crew right now. We have half of the office here. People are out for various reasons, from vacations to etc. So we haven't been moving through it quite so quickly, but I'm actually, this weekend, I have some friends from out of town coming to stay with us. And them, along with my wife and my mother-in-law, in her first ever D&D game, we are going to start to finish Waterdeep Dragon Heist this weekend, starting on Saturday morning and wrapping up on Sunday night. Taking breaks for food and sleep. But yeah, we're going to do the whole thing. So I'm excited. Royal Gentleman, can potions of speed be renamed to haste potions? I don't know. I mean, to be honest, I never really thought about the naming convention for our potions. But I'll pass your feedback along at least. Anathol Belazar, will Paulton have his flying loot since the characters are not necessarily up to date? For example, Binwin, Fighter Barbarian. Those who were at PAX or who pay attention to our social media may have known that we did a poster for the Waffle Crew that we were giving away at PAX, and then you could get the cast, including Chris Perkins, to sign it. I can't seem to hold this straight relative to the camera. I'm so not used to doing this in reverse. Anyways, this guy right here isn't in game. Now, because he's not in game, Michelle actually drew him from scratch along with Chris Perkins for this poster, and using the most canonically up-to-date version, I guess is the best way to put it, because Paulton now has black hair, because spoilers, if you're a DCA fan and you haven't watched everything, ignore me for a moment, but Paulton's adventures in Chult led to his hair growing long and turning black and him being not so good for a while, but then after that whole situation was resolved, his hair was still black. Now, part of me thinks that Nate just didn't want to go with the blonde wig thing for dressing up for events, which is totally fair. But yeah, canonically his hair is black now, so that makes it a pretty recent Paulton. Although I believe it was after that his loot was destroyed. So, anyways, watch Dice Gamer Action because it's awesome, and I'm like 2 episodes behind, so please don't spoil what happened to Evelyn that everybody was talking about on Twitter. But which version of Paulton it is, I don't know. The flying loot is such a good character part, you know, like he flies on it. I thought it was a mandolin that he flew on, not a lute. I can't remember. Anyways, so maybe it's a roundabout way of saying maybe, which is to say that we've done a first pass on Paulton, and that Paulton doesn't even have legs yet. But we're not going to do Paulton as a champion soon. Like, players can expect him this winter sometime. That's kind of how far out he is. We have some really exciting news to share related to champions in the coming months, but like we're not close enough to them to share yet. So, in addition to all the champions that players now know are in our pipeline. Any info yet on what you are doing for Extra Life? Oh, God. So we spent the entirety of our marketing lunch yesterday talking about what we might do for Extra Life. And we aren't sure yet. I don't know. So, I mean, it'd be really unfair to talk at all about what we're considering because it is very much up in the air. We are definitely going to do an Extra Life. Whether or not we stream it is not confirmed, and how we approach it and donations isn't confirmed. We have a lot of options, and we have a lot of people who are really passionate about playing games with each other. So yeah, it's very much an up in the air thing at this moment. Yeah. Anyways, let's see. Backdoor Shady Dealer. Is it better to level your lowest leveled characters every day, or bank it and spend it all at once on a powerful character? So, as long as you're able to progress through the content at a pace that you're happy with, you don't really need to be leveling characters. You want to be leveling them in order to get past walls, get past different things. Now, whenever you get a chance to buy a new champion, it's almost always worth it to buy that next tier, because that character, when you first buy them, is more powerful than any other character that you already have at that point, usually. So it's almost always worth it to spend it on a character. But if you're saving up for a long period of time to do it, maybe not so much. Like, think about when you're starting a new event with no favor at all, and so every coin is worth only 1 gold. So you need however many kills. You need 50 gold to get Celeste at first, and then 1,000 gold to get Nayeli. Okay, saving up and getting Celeste is worth it, because then you have 2 characters damaging, and you can stay on top of those enemies a lot more easily. And then, you know, progressing a few levels and saving up to get Nayeli, but like, you just want to get that ball rolling. Just get that ball rolling. So. Yeah, if you have to bank for a long period of time, not worth it, usually. But if you can afford a character, which is to say you can just buy a character and still level other characters, that's the way to go. Okay. Does Regis's Ruby of Weakness affect click damage? Oh, I will pass that along, because I'm not quite clear exactly how that works. Some of our things affect click damage already, so I'm not sure if that's one of them. Royal Gentleman, can there be a Time Gate exclusive champion that rarely pops up in your Time Gate selection? That's pretty evil. I think about what Riot Games did with like the way that they've monetized the game, and then you have a small chance to either unlock an exclusive skin of somebody or whatever, and like I worry a bit about that kind of stuff. Yeah. So a Time Gate exclusive, let's just say I will pass that feedback along. And if Justin laughs maniacally, then it might be something we'd do. But I feel like there's a much better chance he'll look at it and be like, no, that's unfair. So I don't know. It's a possibility, but Aaron247. The more champions we get, the smaller the chance for a specific one to show up in a Time Gate. Could we get some weighting that makes characters who haven't shown up in a long time more likely to show up? As I understand it, they shuffle around. Like, you're more likely to see a champion you have never unlocked than any other. Like, there should be, like, if there's a number of characters you've unlocked, then there should always be at least one that you don't already have. So that's kind of the way that's been approached. I don't know that it's going to be weighted at all other than that, because, yeah, RNG. Like, we want our RNG to actually be RNG. So I don't know. Like, I'm not gonna say no, but I'm not gonna say maybe. Like, I don't know. Maybe. Let's see. Pemkek error. Could we get away during Time Gates to get a set of level 1 white gear when we open new champions, so we could use blacksmith contracts on them? No. An hour to kill. Respecialization potions seem like a waste in loot boxes, especially considering their rarity. What is your opinion on outmoding these potions and replacing them with, say, a gold cost to respec? Probably not. And we brought those into the game because players asked for them. Like, until we added them, one of our most common bits of feedback was like, we want a way to respecialize our champions for whatever reason. So that's why they're there. I'm not saying you guys brought this on yourselves, because you were probably thinking of some other system for it, but 10% of current earned gold like isn't going to do anything for you, because you're already at a point where you're making so much gold because the increases are exponential. So like, that wouldn't really do anything. So I mean, it's unlikely that we'll do something else with respecialization right now. But certainly players who really know the game, and because we no longer accidentally swap specialization slots around in the UI, a lot of players end up with lots of them. Like, how many do I have right now in this? Wait, that's not it. Where is it? There we go. 40 of them. Yeah, 40. Let's see. Tasku plays games. Could there be an option for new players to possibly earn more than 2 chests from Time Gates when they first unlock the hero? No. the best way to earn equipment for a champion, if you're playing free to play, is always going to be the event that they're from. And then time gates are just there to like allow you to actually supplement unlocking them, or be a stopgap to kind of help you get some more item levels. But it's not intended to be a system that gets you to catch up. Yeah, not to catch up all the way. That's not really how it's intended. How about an option to reset one variant once per week, so being able to replay it? There are a lot of really cool ones that we can only replay once. We have plans in the pipeline for for replaying variants that are not at a point I can share anything for, but like that is very much on our minds as well. I'm gonna make another note about it because it comes up a bit, but yeah. Baron Stromgard, will Azaka, Hitch, and Dritz get their own champion achievements at some point? Yeah, at some point. Yinzer, how are attributes and alignments determined? There was some discussion on Reddit about attributes for Dritz. Charisma 11 for a lovable trial seems low, and Wolfgar, Charisma 14. And even Wolfgar's CG alignment seemed to vary through his arc. With companions, for example, was there a point in time used as a reference point? So almost every chunk of stats we have comes directly from Wizards of the Coast. That said, other ones just straight up you can blame Chris for. There are characters where it's like, okay, we know that if we give one character too much charisma and they benefit from Hitch, that they'll overshadow a character in some way, or it doesn't make sense for them to have whatever. And like Ishii was like the Ishii stats we got, we nerfed from what Violet actually has for Ishii at the moment, because the stats were too high. Ishii benefited from too many things, so we did a categoric nerf. But yeah, it's either. So basically, our stats are either directly from Wizards of the Coast, because they will give us the version of the stats that they want us to use, or it was Chris, and you can blame Chris. Let's see. How big a challenge is it to balance things like Deacon's Troubadour Troop now that you're adding another bard? I don't think it's reached a point yet where we need to worry about it, but basically, I mean, with Satine's character Valanya, and with Paulton, Nate's character, those are two more bards. And if none of them share slots, then it's like, oh, suddenly Troubadour Troop is starting to get better. I mean, it's something that we have to consider ongoing. If we ever got to the point where we were going to break it, we might make a change. But so far, we're pretty happy with it. Hurt McDurp again. Any chance of getting any of the Acquisitions Incorporated people into the game? Cough, AOFL, cough. AOFL. Isn't that Will Wheaton's character? Or are they off limits since they are technically not official? So, I mean, I can't speak to anybody from ACK Inc., but on the topic of adding characters that are not already licensed or owned by Wizards of the Coast directly, it is a pretty significant undertaking that requires a lot of legal legwork and a lot of back and forth discussion. And to reach agreements between the owner of the IP, which usually in most cases is like whoever the player is owns their character, Wizards of the Coast, D&D, and us. Not Codename Entertainment so much as Idle Champions, which is a licensed game from D&D. So that stuff takes time. Like the first character we ever did that with was Arkan, because we were able to connect with Joe. I think before we even went into closed beta. And so we were able to work all that stuff out in time for launching the game. But it took us almost 8 months to get to the point where we were once again able to start approaching it. And we approached it with Holly, and then followed it up with Scott Kurtz and Binwin, and then Evelyn. So like, we've got it to the point where we can move a little bit faster, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And we have to sometimes try to work with people who are not easy to reach. Can I explain the Regis ult to me? What about it? He holds his Ruby pendant up, mesmerizing enemies before attacking, damaging all enemies in a medium radius, and providing the effective Ruby encouragement to all champions. So he does an AoE attack that hits for the damage listed, and then Ruby encouragement, which currently only increases the damage of champions behind Regis, will buff the entire party. Baron Stromgard. If Dylan met his mirror universe twin, would the twin be clean shaven, and what alignment would the twin be? Well, let's see. I'm already lawful neutral, so I guess he'd be chaotic neutral. As for clean shaven, no, he'd have a mustache for sure. Frosty, could it be made possible to not get a duplicate of an item multiple times in the same chest? That tends to only happen in champion, like event chests, right? Like if you open a Wolfguard chest, your chances of getting more than one of the same thing, because the loot pool is 6 different items, 6 different slots, is pretty high. It's not something we worry about for gold chests, because it can happen, but yeah, I'm not really worried about that for event chests. And on that note, I'm going to welcome David, Codename Entertainment co-founder, UI guy, Red Bull connoisseur, to the stream. And I'll do this thing. We'll slide this over a little bit. This camera is a little off. The problem with so many people using this room now is that they bump everything, and I gotta fix it. That's a little better. A little better.
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh yeah, no, you're coming in good.
Perfect.
The smooth sounds of Dave Whitaker. We already have questions here for you. Like, check this out.
Oh my, does that say 74 pages?
Yeah, but that's it includes all the questions for like the last few months.
Oh, okay.
It's not today.
Made me worried there for a second.
You're here for 5
so
hours.
We're not getting through 74 pages of questions.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. There's a raffle going on. Let's see. This looks like a suggestion. Could we get a way to lock the champions in their formations so that I don't accidentally remove a character when clicking distractions? Oh, so just being able to lock them so that, like, there's a button here and then you can't do that.
Huh. That's the first time I've actually heard anyone suggest that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly something we could think about. That's like a sort of a manic attack on the incoming distraction. You end up moving Brunor there.
Yeah, I've never really thought about that. I don't think I've done that. Because, like, if I was really worried about distractions, I just click at the top here, and then I have all this room.
Fair enough.
Super easy.
I mean, maybe that's the question for that player. Is you're aware you can actually do that? Because that's
how come when I click this, it doesn't hide the bottom as well?
Are you talking to me? No.
I'm just teasing you.
You know, I didn't even put that in. It was one of the co-ops back 8 months ago, and they
was it Jacob or Moiki?
No, it was Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, Moiki.
And I didn't even know it was there for weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I requested it for something, and then he did it like right away.
Well, that makes sense.
Let's see. Artifact C. With year 2 events, will the gear chests be split between returning champions like Stokey and the new event champion? Will it then be harder to gear out new champions? Have we got to the point where we're planning that part yet?
Yes, I know Justin and I were discussing this yesterday, and we had an answer, and now I can't remember if it was 1 or 2. I believe it's just going to be 1 that's split across them, but my memory's fuzzy right now for that. I think that's what it's going to be.
Just a single chest?
Yeah, just the single chest.
Are you going to change the name then?
I guess we'll have to.
Because it's like Gold Stokey chest right now.
Yeah, no, I think we'll have to change the name on it.
Okay.
But yeah, like I said, I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's where we're going with it.
Twitch Mithril would like to know if we could expect to see 3rd specialization choices for older champions. Because now that we've set the precedent of adding specializations, it's something that could happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could happen eventually, especially if you get up there in the levels. I mean, it's kind of boring if their only upgrades at that point cease to have any sort of choice.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I could easily see that happening once we get to do a lot more upgrades, and we do keep adding upgrades. So
yeah. Is there like, on that note, what is it you look for when you're considering adding something like that?
I mean, that's going to be more of like a Justin question for just from a balance standpoint, sort of which directions you take the character. I think at that point it's does this character's sort of usage change? So I think with like when I know you've been talking about the eventual balance change updates that are going to occur, and when they do, I mean, those specialization choices really determine whether or not that character is going to be used for, you know, like, say, a tanking character or a DPS character, and we're hoping to actually have a difference between those two and make them viable specs.
Yeah.
So at that point, I mean, if you do a third choice, the third choice would have to have sort of a meaningful switch at that point from like, massive, in what direction that particular skill goes. So if you're having a tank character that, say, could take a lot of damage, you might shift it to a tank character who could return a lot of damage or something like that, or have additional effects that were different. But it certainly affects the path of the character at that point.
Okay. Oh, no. Chris says one chest per champion.
It's a split. All right.
So I guess that's the finalized answer that you guys landed on.
I knew I couldn't remember quite what we hit there.
Yeah. So yeah, 2 different chests. Well, that'll make it easy to gear up specific champions. So that should make you happy, right? You guys are happy? No. Let's see. Shift clicking on the familiar menu icon pulls out the next unlocked familiar and puts it on the next free battlefield slot.
Oh, I see a suggestion that if you do shift click, yes. Someone suggested that to me, or something like that, in one of the tickets, and it actually seemed like a good idea. It was something I put on the list of things to look at, just because for a lot of players it doesn't matter specifically which familiar is in which slot, just that the slots are all full.
Yeah.
And so ways to quickly fill that out. Yeah, no, that was a good idea. I think it's on the list.
Okay. Let's see, what do we got next? Is there a rough idea of when the previous weekend Golden Epics will hit the store? Sometime this year or early next year? Guesses are totally acceptable. Won't hold you to it. Just want to get a feel for when my wallet will take the hit.
We definitely intend to get those in there at some point, but we actually don't have a plan on that at this point that's been solidified. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's before the end of the year, but we just don't have a plan solidified for it
yet. When will we have a purchase all available upgrades option? My fingers hurt from clicking.
When will we have an all available upgrade option? Just like the one in Crusaders.
Well, is there one in Crusaders?
Yeah, there's you can buy it as it's a talent upgrade in Crusaders.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we should just make it a tier 5 blessing.
No, not a bad idea. I would say it's not something that's on the radar right now, but when we get a chance to look over sort of it probably will end up in a quality of life upgrade at some point, and it could very well end up in a blessing the way Dylan suggested.
Yeah, more blessings, more. If you want the quality of life, you have to play the game more to get it. That's mean. All right, let's see. Brag. Would it be possible to implement a bar to show the health of the actual wave of monsters? I mean, if you're referring to that, I mean, there's one right here that tends to be like, that's your progress bar for this area.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting, I guess the purpose of that would be if you're doing like a boss wave, if you could see how far along you got, including the boss. Although in many cases, the boss would represent a pretty sizable proportion of that. So in that case, mostly the boss health bar covers it.
Yeah, that'd be kind of strange.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not. I mean, it would be possible, but probably not something we would do.
A player is asking if it's possible to have it so that the text dialogue that reappears after you close the game, but are still doing... They don't want it to reappear after you close the game and then reload it, and it's doing the same adventure. I guess because the area starts over when you close and reload, right?
Yeah, we haven't actually... none of the area progress is stored, actually, when you do that. So if you were to get halfway through the area and then close the game, you'd come back and you'd have 0 out of whatever you were collecting or killing.
Yeah.
It's just a much simpler implementation for us, less possibilities of issues or bugs. Probably not something that we would add for that. I'm not sure where the situation would be where you find that ends up being a continuous issue. I mean, most of the time you're going to be leaving the game open. If you're leaving at the same area and opening again, it's a small amount of time. I mean, if it were an issue that was getting a lot of feedback that this was a problem, but I don't feel like it's a big problem.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the feedback we get about dialogue tends to revolve around people wanting to be able to skip it in free play.
Yeah, I mean, certainly we see players who really love the dialogue and really love to know what's going on, and others who feel like it gets in the way of their game. And so we try to balance between those two for dialogue purposes. But anyway.
A player who is using speed potions wants to know if they could have set durations and then stay active for each adventure. Because the epic ones last until the end, and then they don't like the fact that resetting removes their potions.
Right. Right. Yeah, I don't think we could do anything specific for the speed potions. It was a big change back when we switched the potions over from being, was it 2 hours that they were, an hour? They were some large.
Yeah, it was like, there were ones that were like just a few minutes, and then it went all the way up to an hour, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And so when we switched them over to being lasting the entire duration, and that was, like I said, that was a big step up right there. So, I think they last long enough.
Yeah, I don't see that as an issue. I mean, I think players are already able to get quite a lot out of a speed potion. Like, they save you an incredible amount of time, and they allow you to get to your wall or farm at your wall or whatever really fast. So,
yeah, and that was something that we've been looking at a way to address for some time. So, and that definitely helps with getting back to your wall as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Carbon86 wants to know if, being a free-to-play game, have we considered a premium membership for those dedicated players who want to support us long-term?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've considered, although it isn't something that we've been actively putting further thought into at this time, would be having something where you had a membership, like a monthly membership that would give you some sort of monthly bonus, a certain number of chests or a certain number of free buffs or something that occurred that gave you an active benefit just to being subscribed. It is definitely something that we've talked about, but it isn't something that we've been putting any current thought into. But I mean, I wouldn't rule it out.
Okay. Mia Skull, will familiars stand in the lanes with future updates instead of on top of monsters? Because monsters walking through familiars looks strange, which, sometimes it does.
Yeah, the reason they're on top like that for the most part is because they're actually sort of floating over top of everything, which makes them easier to get a hold of when you go to grab them. Mm-hmm. So nothing's interfering with that. So I mean, that's the primary reason that they sit where they do. I mean, in general, they look a little bit odd, sort of floating over the buttons or the UI or the wherever you end up placing them.
Yeah.
Just because they're not really UI elements. They're sort of free floating, and so it would end up being a difference of like placing them right. I mean, we could do it. I just think it's more complicated in a way that doesn't get a whole lot of benefit, and it does make them a little harder to pick up. If, for example, there was a whole ton of monsters on the screen, you'd have a hard time discerning where they were.
Well, on that note, I mean, like, so, I guess what was the thought process and methodology used to determine that, like, this is where we're going to put familiars? Like, these are the slots right here, or, I mean, these ones are all pretty intuitive why those spots are chosen, but this one a little less so.
Yeah, I mean, for the ones in the front there, the biggest issue was making sure they weren't in the way of anything, as well as so far enough away from the formation that you weren't going to get anything overlapping or confused with what was already there.
Yeah.
And then beyond that, the fact that they're over top is tied to, A, that we didn't want to mix them in with the monsters, and then B, making it so that, because they are kind of UI elements, the UI does float over top of everything.
Okay.
And so that just seemed like the natural way to put them together. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Is it intentional or a bug that certain bosses can get locked down by your familiar clicks? For instance, I'm currently on Mad Wizard level 210. The spider boss is powered up to E35X and growing, but it's locked down by familiars, and I'm very slowly whittling it down.
I mean, that's a bug. All of the monsters, including the bosses, are supposed to be able to be locked down, or like click locked for a limited number of clicks, and then after that, they're not supposed to be affected by them anymore. And so, I mean, you'll find for most monsters, especially ones that are moving, if your familiars are clicking on them, they'll stop for a little bit and then they'll progress forward slowly. So if it completely blocks it out, and I have seen a few reports of that, a complete blockout like that is a bug.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any thoughts to having a global speed buff in the shop? Sort of like how damage favor buffs are.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly an option we could add in. I think the only reason there isn't one right now is because it didn't exist when we were designing the shop elements.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I still have one of the shop ones right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I think it should have worn off. I think it bugged out.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it bugged out when I was messing with the expired fire breath and potion of speed interactions, because like none of my timers have seemed to be quite right since then. Yeah, not that it'll wear out eventually, right? At worst, I could just go into the system and remove it. But all right, will the game be an idle game before exiting early access? For example, fixing offline gold.
That's our intention for sure. A few more fixes in there we want to get before we remove the before we move from early access to release. One of them is the offline gold, and the other one is the tanking, the balance update that I think Dylan mentioned earlier in the stream.
Yeah.
I think you said you gave it a big 3. You were saying.
Oh yeah, the offline gold gain, the champion balance pass, and the tanking and healing update are like big projects.
Yeah.
They became the big 3 when they were named unintentionally, and then became something that we repeatedly had to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say we get those done, and that's when we move out of early access.
Yeah.
At least that would be the goal.
Yeah.
And there's been a substantial amount of work done on the offline gold.
Yeah, I think Mark put a ton of work into it at the start, right?
Definitely. But I'm not 100% sure where it is right this moment. I know it got a significant amount of progress was done, and then other things came up, and it's sort of been on the back burner since then.
Oh, kind of like stalled out due to the whole small indie studio things going fire kind of deal.
Yeah, next champion needed to be there, next variants were there. We had 16 new effects that needed to go in, and
yeah, it's that's the story. It's funny actually, because I'm hitting my 1-year anniversary with Codename in 2 weeks. 2 weeks this coming Friday, actually. Oh, it's a Friday. Anyways.
Oh, let's have a cake.
Yeah. Anyways, my cake day. But having been a gamer since I don't know, Commodore 64, I think it was.
Wow.
But well, it wasn't mine. It was my friend's. The first one I owned was a NES.
Yeah, it was mine too.
That was the first one I owned. But being on the outside of the game studios, like looking at how studios interact with their players and all that stuff, and then switching to being somebody who is okay, more on the inside and able to talk to players about it from the other perspective. I have a newfound respect for a lot of the companies that do it really well, that like do those interactions well, and but also a little bit more of the opposite for the ones that opt not to, because I don't think there's any reason not to have a good dialogue with your players. I think that's kind of the whole point of having people in my role, but just in general, like, why wouldn't you talk to your players? They're there, they want to talk to you. So, anyways.
No, I get that. It's like we've got 18 people and we do it, and you're.
Yeah.
It's like, oh wow.
Yeah. But yeah, we have we have 10 people in the office today, and including I think neither for that team unless Nick showed up. Is Nick here?
I think
he woke up with a migraine. He's like, I'm going to go back to bed and hope it disappears. But we're a small enough team that summer vacations and other stuff like that have a pretty
big impact.
Potentially massive impact. Yeah. So I look at my list of things to do just with Clive gone, and I'm like, oh wow, I got a lot more stuff to do. I have to talk to a lot more people right now. Eric is messaging me a lot more, stuff like that. So it's just how it goes. All right. This looks like another suggestion. How about a consumable which adds another slot to the formation, which can be filled with any character, even with a character in a slot which is a swap already in the formation, like 5, 10, 5, 15, 60 minutes,
an extra
etc.
character.
That would be bonkers.
Yeah,
that would be so bonkers.
That is a curious idea. I think the balance on that might be questionable.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I was mentioning earlier that one of the reasons we don't have an 11 or 12 slot formation is like, it's just like taking your balance and throwing it out that window.
Yeah, especially if they're interconnected slots. Get an extra slot that's not actually adjacent to anything might not be the end of the world.
Yeah.
But if it's in the formation connecting to everyone else,
you just have them like they're out here. Yeah. They can't actually connect.
It's a bonus character. Of course, we did something like that. I'd be like, well, this character's useless. We're not using this slot.
Yeah. PB and Jotter, I want to build your own character that you can put together with pieces of the existing in-game heroes. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest question with that would be what would it do and how would it fit in terms of balancing. But this would be quite this curious-looking character,
Yeah.
Various different arms and legs and weapons from each character.
I think I'd just take Archon and give him a bigger weapon, and then make his abilities not Archon's abilities. Anyways, could it be made possible to not get a duplicate of an item multiple times in the same chest?
I mean, it could be made possible. It shouldn't happen very frequently. I mean, I guess that's for most of the major, like most of the important upgrades, it's guaranteed that you don't end up, or that you end up with an upgrade that you need every time, which is kind of covers the big question of making sure that every chest has something in it that you need.
Yeah.
Making sure that you don't have individual duplicates. I mean, in many cases, that would just mean you ended up with duplicates that were different.
I can think of at least one time with an event champion chest where I opened the chest and I had the epic piece of loot, but then I also had like, you know, 2 greens of the same one, and I was like, ugh, like it's just like, like what just happened? So I could get why players might be unhappy with when that happens.
Sometimes you need that "are you kidding" moment to actually sort of make the other.
I personally really like it when those pictures get shared on social media. What the hell? Yeah. WTF? Why did you do this to me? You know,
you got to balance it out. It can't just all be good, and then it just gets boring.
Yeah. I honestly think we're really generous already with our waiting to make sure that there's upgrades, like guaranteed all the rares in 6 chests for a character, and then you know, an epic every 10 and stuff like that. Like it's,
and you can't get duplicate, you know, shinies over top of existing shinies until you filled it all out, and you know, get that potion of polish if you buy a golden epic that's on top of a shiny. Try to keep all those bases covered. We don't want it to be a real kick in the pants when you get something that you know, replaces something you already had and it's not better. So
yeah, this is an interesting question from Herp McDerp, who's been asking a lot of questions today.
Herp McDerp.
It took me a minute when I first looked at the name. It's the 3s that throw you off, but it's Herp McDerp. Anyways, have you ever given thought to having the time gates do a checksum to see if you have a champion that is missing slot pieces, and then allocating at least one of the 3 to that champion as an option? That way, it's not completely RNG and can at least be directed in a beneficial direction to some degree.
It's missing slot pieces.
Yeah, so like
need pieces for.
Like say you're a new player, you unlocked Barrowin last time, and then Barrowin shows up again. It's like
right. I mean, that's an extension to what we already do, which is that we make sure you have at least one that you don't have, if there is a champion that you don't have.
Yeah.
I actually don't see that as being an issue, or as being something that wouldn't make sense to do, to make sure there was one there that you needed equipment for, at least to some extent. So I mean, I think pass that on to Justin if he's not listening.
Maybe the champions are missing like rare slots, which means you have an opened gold chest. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question on that, it might be a question of, we can give you the one that you have the least items on, but you might have the least items on that one because you don't use that one, and that's not one you've been working on.
Oh yeah.
So
that would be pretty savage. It's like, and here's another Narak one and another Kron one.
No, we could think about that, but we'd have to make sure we didn't. Your intentions could be either way, right? So
yeah.
We'll think about it.
Certainly, you're just trying to think of which one's going to give you more tickets.
I'm not per se, but it does seem like
it's hard not to think about that.
You either get what you want or you get what you really don't want.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like this. I'm not upgrading this character. Why do you keep showing it to me?
Yeah. Absurd Nerd Blog wants to know if we could add the option to sell potions that you don't want or need for either gold or gems.
I don't know. That's a question. All right.
I think if it came to gold, that would be problematic with an event, because you just start the event and you sell a bunch of potions you don't need that are epic and make a bunch of gold and unlock everybody. And
yeah, I mean, I don't think we could sell them, like if you wanted to clean out your inventory and be just, I don't need these. I mean, I don't think we could sell them for very much. I think that would be the issue, is there's not a good conversion rate, like what they actually get you in game versus, and if you're selling them and you don't need them or want them, then maybe those particular ones weren't very much value to you in the first place.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're just trying to clean up your inventory, I'd say just use them all up. If you were hoping for a significant amount of gold or gems, I can't, and off the top of my head, I'm not entirely sure what they'd be worth, like what a fair value would be. And of course, if you're in an adventure, how much gold you get is completely determined by
the greater question might be, is like, do we want to have a storefront in game that allows you to do that kind of thing? And it's like, and then how do we protect it from, either intentional or accidental exploitation?
Well, there's that.
So it's
because we don't sell them, because you can't buy them for gold. We'd certainly do something where, you click on the potion, there's a little button at the bottom, use or sell for 10 gold. That wouldn't kill us, but it's just what it would be worth would be the tricky part.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, a UI-related question. Could you add some sort of UI element to show what future upgrades on a champion would be? So
someone asked you this earlier, I think.
Yeah, in a different way.
Yeah.
Because here's Stokey.
Right, and I believe we've mentioned previously that this dialogue does. There is we're working on an improved version of this dialogue.
Yeah, the champion, just the whole champion background UI kind of thing.
Yeah,
right?
and in that there is actually a couple of modes for where you're seeing the upgrades, and one of them does show you what upgrades are upcoming. So it's in the works.
Yeah, there we go. Anyways.
Party Jar Axel. Oh,
Yeah.
someone zoomed his face out. Yes.
Alrighty, could you add, yeah, I read that one. Is it possible that you can change language in the game? Ooh, do you want to take that question?
Sure.
Change language?
So certainly translating the game into different languages is something that we have talked about. The biggest challenge for us right now on that one is that there's just so much text in game that it would actually be a substantial undertaking to actually get all of that translated at this time. And then the other factor that comes into play, and it's something because we did do translation in Crusaders for the mobile version, and that is that a lot of the UI ends up having to be reworked to fit different versions of different strings in different languages because they end up being different lengths.
Ooh, yeah.
And so that can be a significant time-consuming case of just going over every element in every language and making sure that they all fit. And if they don't fit, then sending them back to the translator to be like, oh, we need this to be shortened and can't lose its contextual meaning. And so it's a huge undertaking. Something that we've looked at. It's something that I know certain people in the office here would love to do if possible.
Yeah.
But it's not something that we're working on right now.
Yeah, and also, as I recall, it's like profoundly expensive, especially the more dialogue and stuff you have.
That too, yeah.
Yeah.
They charge by the word for translation, and the more we add more adventures, there's a lot of dialogue in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, because there are languages out there. Just thinking off the top of my head, like. It's a lot of potential players, but it's a pretty significant expense to even try to approach that. So,
yeah, no, for sure.
Alrighty. Oh, yeah, it's 22T. I know that campaigns are a lot of work, but what are the odds we could see a campaign with just Companions of the Hall champions? I think that would be awesome.
Oh, you want to field that?
Yeah, I mean the biggest challenge with that being that 3 of them are event champions. Which is less of an issue now that we have time gates and we have other ways to unlock them. So like it's easier for players to get access to them. But I suppose the big thing would be like we like these kinds of ideas around what kind of parties we can put together and to like to vary things up, especially since a lot of players end up with a pretty a static group of champions that they use to progress and play all the variants. They just look at how can I make my formation fit this. The formation I always use fit this new unique shape, this new train wreck of formation UI that's just got thrown into the game. Like, how do I fit everybody into it? So it's possible, but it's also like, especially in that specific case where 3 of them are event champions, it's a lot more challenging. So, oh, this is interesting. Usually we blame Chris. Sometimes we blame Dylan. What can we blame David for?
Oh, I'm sure there's something really juicy that I can't think of off the top of my head.
If you're wondering why the game doesn't support more resolutions or full screen mode, this is your guy.
Oh, yeah, there's that. I mean, I was going to get the 4K stuff done, and I bought a 4K monitor here for my desk at work, and then I didn't implement the 4K stuff.
For some reason, I thought you would have done that. I didn't even think about it.
No, I've been it's on my plate still. We did add the higher resolutions, but there's still a bunch of scaling stuff that needs to be looked at in more detail.
Yeah.
I mean, yesterday we did a rollout, and the iOS version number was off by 1. So for a brief period there, players on iOS couldn't start the event. And you can blame me for that. I don't know. Like I say, I'm sure there's something that it's really juicy, but we're just forgetting about it right now. So.
Okay.
I'm sure it's someone else's job to keep track of that. I blame Chris.
Yeah. I know this question is basically for Justin or Chris, but I'll ask it anyways. When will you make Archon the greatest and worthiest and fire-breathiest?
Well, he is the most fire-breathiest.
Yeah. But I think they just want Archon to be good. Which is, as I recall, has been like bookmarked for the tanking and healing balance update, and it's just like left there. It's like that's when we'll touch Archon.
Yeah. I was saying earlier that I got a ticket the other day from someone who was telling me that they wanted more control over who they could place. I think it was a shiny potion on. He's like, sometimes I use one and I get one for Arcan, and that makes me feel sad. I was like, oh man, no, we got to fix
Yeah,
this.
that
This is
that
something
is
we got
not
to
what we
fix. This
intend. Yeah.
is not the intent. Yeah.
Yeah. There have been a lot of really cool ideas around Archon discussed, but I don't know how much of it's going to make it into what updates. So let's just say that we hear your feedback, we acknowledge your concerns, and it's in our plans. This one's interesting. Will the champion rebalance give Bruner a reason to use Inspired more? Please. So second specialization. I'm actually going to make a note about that for Chris.
Well, I thought it was Brainor.
No, God. Just because we spelt it Brainer like 50 times lately, like we were on a typo roll yesterday with everything. It was bad. Like, I don't know what it was. I don't know what was going on, but yeah, we spelled so many things wrong in such a short period of time that I am sure there were people questioning whether we've ever proofread anything. So yes, and on that note, if you have a typo, send us a ticket with the details. But if you find 10 of them, don't send us 10 tickets, just send us one.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Anyways, let's see. Is there a way to tell if Ishii's Wait For It gold buff is actually taking effect? I took out a few champions to ensure nothing was dying, but I don't see my gold pine changing and no stacks displayed in the character screen. So that would be... oh yeah, because I have to buy enough upgrades to get to it. This one. Wait for it.
Every 2 seconds.
Now this is one that I know that Chris and Justin have looked at. I don't know what the last verdict on it was. So I'm just going to make a note for it and see if Erica can't suss that out while we're chatting.
Is there a way to actually see this taking effect? Do we show nothing for that on the buff screen? Is there,
yeah, and like so if you put Ishii in the formation, like it's there, but it doesn't show up right.
Because I thought it showed on the...
friends to shorties. How about?
Looking at the actual buff tab on the character sheet. Wait for it. Caps, and it doesn't say your current.
Why 3 point? Well, it doesn't count up and down.
Okay.
Right. So in theory, this would cap at 30 stacks, being like 90.
And it doesn't show on the upgrades tab in some weird, like if you, is it not? Huh.
Yeah, it doesn't count up and down.
Yeah,
so
I thought there was one that... There's like, a lot of them that do stuff like that, so I thought that might have been one of them, but...
Yeah. You just have, like, coins counting up beside Ishii or something. I don't know. But yeah, that is something that is missing.
Fair enough.
Oh, thank God the DPS went up when I dragged Dritz in there. I was so worried for a second there that it wouldn't. Alrighty. David, will you make the game HDR?
No, absolutely not.
Cool. I like that. I like quick answers. All right. What about borderless full screen?
It is borderless full screen. That's the problem. If you go full screen, it is in fact borderless full screen, but it behaves weirdly. I'm not sure why it does that. It was one of the Unity options for actually what the full screen modes are. So I mean, borderless full screen means it doesn't change your base monitor resolution. It just scales the internal buffer to whatever size you've set it to, and that's what it does. But it does behave weirdly when you go to the other monitor, and then stuff comes up, and then the thing flickers. And
I know I was trying to get screenshots in the full screen mode yesterday for something, and it was just fighting me every step of the way.
Yeah. So I mean, we've played with trying to make it behave better. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where we have very few options to play with because it's part of the Unity export. And I think the majority of players actually play windowed anyway because they just like to minimize it and move on. So
yep.
It would be best if it didn't behave that way in full screen. But currently it does, and we haven't been able to really prioritize any time in looking further into that at this point. So
okay.
So sorry.
Let's see. Sometimes I wonder which champion killed an opponent. Is there any way you can have a champion that gets a kill, hop once, and a multi-kill twice or something like that? So something to signify when they're like, yes.
It's certainly possible.
I tried to click on the XSplit window for the distractions instead of the actual game window. So
yeah, I think there's actually buried in there is a kill log, actually.
Don't tell them that, they're going to want it now.
I don't remember what the key I set in for that is. I know there was some players who were having a timing issue, and I ended up putting it in.
Text just scrolling up like
yeah,
World of
there's
Warcraft.
a kill log. I can't remember what the hotkey is it for now, but it's in there. And then it told you who killed what. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if you could you'd be able to see who was killing what. In most circumstances, everyone would be hopping all the time, but that's something to think about. A kill log, on the other hand, might like a very like a nice, proper-looking one might also be something that would be.
Yeah, you could just have it scrolling, but if you clicked on it, it would.
Yeah.
It would have. mean, you kill so many monsters. Like, you leave it at your wall for a day or two, what's going to happen?
It would have to, have 200 items and then scroll up and then disappear.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be like one of those logs. I think one of the earlier memory leaks we ran into was we had a built-in error. It was actually just the debug log. And so we've got a lot of output messages, and it was running in the background there. And if you left the game long enough, you'd have so many, millions of messages that piled up, and then you'd actually run out of memory, and then the game would crash just because of the items going into the debug log.
Huh.
So whenever we do anything like that, you have to be very, very careful to make sure that there's a limit of the number of records that are kept active in memory. But yeah.
All right. David, did you hire Dylan because he looks similar to you?
Absolutely.
Really? Yeah, totally.
That's the only criteria here.
Yeah. So narcissistic. Twitch Mithril would like to know whether or not they can get a dev Q&A for more technical questions.
We can talk about that. Yeah.
Sure.
Because I guess right now you and is it just you that does the Q&As?
I do them unless Chris is here instead of me. But we never did get around to setting up one where either you or Justin or somebody else sits down and answers questions for a period of time on Reddit.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly something we could do. We do end up in a lot of crunch time where it's probably more. You'd probably rather we were working on fixing bugs and getting features in than spending our time answering questions. But we could probably do it on a.
But then, how would they ask those questions and tell you about it? Right?
It could be something that was less frequent, I think, is what I'm trying to say. We could make time for that.
Yeah, like quarterly.
Yeah.
All right, Ockhurst. Question: can we get an invisible stalker as a familiar? Just a blank spot.
Invisible stalker.
As a bad joke, but I like it. I mean, quasits can go invisible too. You could have a quasit familiar. All right, David, what's your favorite 5e book? Favorite 5e book. What's your favorite 5e book?
Off the top of my head, go. I don't know. I don't think I've got one. And I was avoiding reading a lot of them because we were going to run the campaign, and then I've just, I like the Monster Man. Those are the ones I spend the most time in. It would have been the monster manuals. So I don't have a...
But the storybook.
The story one. I mean, the one that resonates the most with me would be Curse of Strahd.
Yeah, that one's good.
That one is certainly from a conceptual standpoint my favorite sort of thematic book.
Is it the Ravenloft thing? Is it the Goth Vampire thing? Is it...
I mean, I think all of that goes together to make a really a theme that I really enjoy. But
have you ever wanted to play Castlevania? Here you go.
But I haven't read through that particular one just for spoilers reasons. So.
Yep, it's easy to spoil.
Yeah. It's like Tomb of Annihilation. I read that one back to front for doing the content when we were doing it. Because as you mentioned, there was I did some of the writing on some of the pieces, and that required.
Yeah.
And then it's just full of spoilers. So.
Yeah. It's you get a look behind the curtain, and it's Schultz is full of stuff, but all of it wants to kill you.
Everywhere to go and who to give to what. And,
Soulcath wants to know when Binwin will get a seagull familiar, probably because of the seagull bonking him on
a gold seagull
stream.
Familiar.
Yeah.
No, it's the Golden Crow. That's what it was.
The Golden Crow is the one that will totally get somebody the company if they find it.
We get the Golden Crow. I get a vacation. Perfect.
Yeah. It'd be funny if just I'd had it on stream and I was like, click. All right. I can't pronounce that name. Is there any way to check what amount of click damage is being done by familiars? If not, is that something that could be added? It would be nice to be able to see what rate of damage they are doing as a group.
Yeah, I mean, currently there isn't
there's just a little spark thing on that.
There's no way to see exactly how much click damage they're doing as a combined total.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be too hard to put something like that in. The real question would be where, where exactly that would be best shown. But.
I can't tell. Is it? It is there. It's just really hard to distinguish it from everything else because, I haven't leveled click at all because it hits for 1 or 2, so you can see the single-digit stuff popping up.
Is that an 8? Just a single 8? Is that what I saw? 3?
3. Well, no, it hit that enemy 8 times.
Right.
It's hitting for 1. But instead, you could have a little number around them, like the familiar. I don't know, some way to distinguish.
Hover over them and have some more information. That is something that we've been talking about doing for the familiars, because we've been working on adding additional familiar abilities, things they do. I'm sure, as most people noticed, once you get up to the new 5 and 6 on screen, that you get the automatic distraction clicking, and then the automatic open of the
boss loop.
Open of the boss loop.
Yeah.
But it doesn't tell you that anywhere. And we would like to put something in that when you're dropping the familiars, it tells you what bonuses that you're achieving.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we get something like that on top of it, we could easily have some additional stats to say, hey, this is what the current damage is. And
it could even just be text that shows up as you're doing it, and and then fades out.
Yeah, I mean, we were thinking of putting a sort of darkening the screen and then putting text next to the familiar slot and saying, hey, you fill this in and you'll get these extra bonuses, and these are your current bonuses. So
yeah, kind of like how right now this shows up.
Yeah, so when you're doing that, the game would gray out a bit, and then thered be some text that was saying what was happening and what you'd get for placing them into the slots that were still empty.
Okay. Yeah, I think people would really appreciate that. All right. This one's got a note already. When will we be able to purchase or open more than one gold chest at a time? So I assume it's the purchasing gold chest with gems.
Right. Yeah. And the little note on there is over Justin's dead body.
Yeah.
It's not quite what it says.
It's not far off.
Let's just go with that as the answer.
Yeah. I do know that eventually we'll get to the point where the idea of being able to click on and open multiple chests at a time isn't something that's entirely beyond the realm of possibility, but I don't know. I mean, people who want to stockpile 5,000 chests, it's kind of on them that they stockpile 5,000 chests. Yeah,
it's sort of outside of the scope of the intended play usage there, and not that we want to say, hey, this is how it's supposed to be played, and if you don't play it this way, then you can't do it, because certainly that's the way you want to play it, go for it. That's fun for you. There's just certain what's the best word for it? We're not going to start adding in additional features that facilitate that if it's outside of the way that we intend it to be used. Unless we look at it and say, you know what, that's a good idea, right? And certainly when we look at something and say, you're right, that is fun, we should do that, then they get added. But if it's outside of that scope, then we don't expect us to. I don't know the best word for it is. I think I covered it. I'm going to sort of mumble here for a bit, ramble, dig myself a hole.
I think all of us can agree that we really admire Blizzard as a company. And if you look in Hearthstone, you can buy one free chest at a time.
Right.
Or one free pack. They've never introduced a way to speed that up.
Fair enough.
I don't know. I'm sure there was a very specific mindset behind why they did it that way. Anyways, let's see. I don't expect costume specifics, but could you spoil which characters you're already planning alternate outfits for?
I want a Pirate Bruenor. I've been saying that for a while now. Pirate Bruenor.
A lot of people have been saying that. I was saying that...
Pirate Brainor, my bad.
Yeah, mine was the idea that is the least likely to happen, which is to say that I wanted Warforged versions of all the characters to be able to switch to, so we could have a full robot party. But I got shot down. I think the only thing we can probably say about skins is that we have one in development.
True.
And then I'll leave it at that. Let's see.
Not Pirate Bruenor.
I love Erica's notes. Let's see. Question. Actually, is this even related to you? No. Well, maybe. A while back, we heard there'd be another way to gear event characters outside time gates. Was that just the new shop's chest sales, or is there another upcoming free-to-play mechanic? Time gates are insufficient and fall further behind with each new character.
I mean, at this point, what was planned was the stuff that you see in the shop now. We don't have any other mechanisms that we're currently working on. I wouldn't rule them out, but when we talked about saying, hey, there's going to be ways that you can get new characters, originally when we said, which would have been before time gates, we had two things in mind. One was the free mechanism, which is time gates, something that you have opportunity to pick a character that you needed to upgrade and then spend some time getting them the gear that they didn't have, and then the next option is to be able to buy the characters directly, which is the option that we've just gotten in. So those were our two primary mechanisms. Where we have another free-to-play mechanism, like a mechanism that you can get for free just by grinding in game. At this point, we don't have any designs on that. I guess I wouldn't rule it out, but those were the two primary mechanisms that we were talking about when we talked about it, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the events.
Yeah. Oh, of course. And they're going to come rolling around again now. I mean, we're looking at. We'll have our first repeat event coming up.
October.
So.
Yeah.
And that'll give you another shot at the characters if you didn't get them the first time through. So.
All right. Question, David. Any thoughts you can share on dialogue display options?
I'm not 100% sure what the question is. Dialogue display options.
I suspect what they're aiming at, because I've had questions like this before, is something like ways to speed up or slow down how quickly the dialogue comes through.
Oh, dialogue. As opposed to, sorry, in my head, dialogues are any of the modal windows that pop up.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah.
So dialogue is in like the textual dialogue.
As in text.
Dialogue display options. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned
we're definitely not going to skip them for the normal, regular adventures and variants, but
yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier that that's certainly something that we do get requested from players sometimes who really their focus for the game is just they want to grind on the idle parts of it, and they're not overly interested in reading the story parts. And then you get players who are certainly way more interested in the story parts, and it goes back too quickly for them. So being able to add a mechanism through what, holy smokes, it's a lot of wow, a lot of.
They feel like tickets?
No, not at all. It's just that my. Sorry, I'll finish the first thought. We'll go to the second thought. I think it's certainly possible that we could put in a timing on that lets it go faster or slower, just because I've gotten both requests to slow it down so that they have longer time to read it, as well as requests for it to, just move on so they can get on with the game.
Yeah.
And so I personally, I'd like to get both those in there.
Yeah, I think, especially having like a slow, medium, and fast option, just for people who are fast readers or slow readers, just to give people the time would probably be really good.
Yeah, no,
as
absolutely.
a player.
Yeah.
So we have way more questions than we have time, so we're just going to try and tear through a lot of this.
Yeah, this is like that list of. I mean, they're not. I don't think of tickets, but we came back from PAX and we had a list as long as my arm and my leg. And it spent a long time catching up, so I apologize to anyone who ended up having to wait 4 or 5 days to get a response from us on that. It was a lot to get to.
No, we really are an indie company, we swear. Okay, so this one's interesting. It's a quality of life thing related to the shop. It's like, can you make the enter a code box appear with focus so we can just control V, and also please make the enter key work?
The answer is yes. Yes, we can do that. It was on the.
It was on the list.
It's on the list. It's on the list.
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to function exactly the way that player wants, but there's a really nice quality of life fix related to that Jacob worked on. Any thoughts on showing the average gold per second to help with farming? I think the answer to that was like no, basically.
Yeah, part of that, no. Part of that would be, and it will have something, and it will have that value as something as part of the update for the offline gold find being fixed. I'm not sure that we have a spot for it, but I know that is actually something we'll have in that, because that's part of making that actually work properly.
Yeah. Dr. Footfist would like to know if we would consider including an out-of-adventure way to mess with various formations so that newer players can experiment.
It's something that's asked frequently. One of the things you can do is just hop back to the first area and play around with it there, because it's perfectly safe. I mean, as long as you're more than 10 levels ahead. You can get there quickly if you hold shift and click the arrow there. It should go back all the way, I'm pretty sure. If I did that not get in, you hold shift. No, all right, that's supposed to be a shift click on that and take you back to level 1. That is on the list, but that would be our go-to. Would just be back up to somewhere you're safe. It has been asked a few times. Yeah, I think for now that's the best option, just because we've got so many items on the plate. I can't prioritize making a standalone screen like that.
To symbolize the speeding up of the questions, I'm going to speed up my game. Alrighty, lightning round. Will you ever add a system for attributes to grow as they level and some benefits for them as you do? For example, Celeste has 15 wisdom at level 1, but at higher levels it seems low. So
I don't.
They're kind of probably hoping
so.
that we do more D&D like stuff with that, which.
Yeah, it'd be a little bit weird for that in that particular context for start at 15 and then go up a few and you're at 18, say by the time you're level 250 or whatever, but then drop back down the next time you reset. It definitely feels like that would be more of a, it feels more like a permanent thing, but it doesn't really fit too well into sort of the context of our formation system. I mean, yeah, I would say probably not something that's going to happen.
Somebody wants to know why we chose to put the enter a code stuff on the right instead of on the left.
There was space there on the left of the shop.
Yeah, I mean the tabs are here, so.
I mean, in all honesty, we got the whole shop done, and then we realized, oh crap, we forgot a spot for enter a code. So that's why it's where it is. Honest answer.
All right.
If we can find a better spot for it, we will.
Yeah. Wet donut hole. Wow. That name really okay on this? I guess it is, but damn. Do you have any plans to make the HP bar of champions always be displayed in a layer above the monsters? When fighting huge bosses, you sometimes can't see. The old tank HP thing.
Yeah, no, we've been asked that more times than I have fingers. I'm just not sure that it looks good with it over top. My thought would be to provide an additional way to know what the health is, maybe on the character, on the bottom, or have it appear above in the case where they're under attack. Yeah, I guess
you could have when they get hit, have the bar like fade in.
Yeah, or have something above. It's one of those cases where that particular solution, just having it appear over top, doesn't sit well with us. Is like, I'm not sure how well it would look. Our feelings, we could think of something better, but we haven't thought of it yet, and so it just sort of sits in that state.
Okay. Analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
I'm like, I could do 50 things with it. I don't know which one.
Sometimes that's really hard.
Somebody wants to know if Deacon's Doom text is on a different layer than he is, because sometimes it obscures the stuff behind him.
I think it is, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Oh. Any way to offer options on familiars instead of floating across all ultimates to just a single ultimate?
It's been something that's been talked about. It isn't something that we've got in at this time.
It has my vote, just FYI.
Fair enough.
Will consideration be given to players who have spent blacksmithing contracts into heroes who are powerful now, but maybe less so after the balance pass?
I mean, a whole significant amount of consideration is going to be given into how the balance pass affects existing items and bonuses, and how people have put what effort's gone into what. It's going to be big on our minds, and we're looking at that to make sure that nobody feels that they were hard done by a change to the balance. Absolutely.
Yeah, and honestly, we certainly approach all of these decisions with players first. It's not just about fixing something in the game or making an adjustment. We want to make sure that the player experience is positive for the whole thing as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Let's see. More of a shout out. Awesome distractions. I'm clickly satisfied. Speed potion more fun. Thank you. What are your short-term goals you'd like to see in the game?
Oh,
that's from Portland days.
I short-term goals. One thing that is on my list that came up this morning that I would like to see in that I can actually talk about, because most of what I'm doing is not announced yet, would be to get the different colored buttons in on the bottom bar there to show you who's in your formation and who's not. I had a nice suggestion from a player this morning suggesting that actually not only we do that, but also if you're going to get a partial level, have the button be like, if you're set to 25 and you can only do 15 levels for your upgrade, that it'd be a slightly darker button so you can see a difference between the two and just know visually whether you're going to be able to do a full upgrade or not.
Make it more intuitive.
Yeah, so I thought that was a really good idea, and I'd like to see us get that in soon.
Cool. Well, you know what? I think we need to start wrapping it up anyways, because we're approaching the end of our hour, and we like to wrap up promptly early for the eventual outcome of which I'm sure at some point D&D will put another show on at 3 o'clock.
Coming up.
Because we used to have one, and we don't right now, but we used to have Lauren's show. Destiny and Doom used to be on after us. So maybe that will come back, Lauren? I don't know. Anyways, how do I want to do this? I always write an outro, and I don't think I did today. No, I did. No, I didn't. I half did. So, that is our show for today for Thursday, September 13th. Thanks to John, Greg, Bart, Pelham, and Lynn at Wizards of the Coast for everything that they do, and especially as well to Satine for everything she does with us through social and all that stuff. You guys are awesome, and you give us space on the D&D Twitch to talk about video games and D&D, which is pretty sweet. This stream would not be possible without the awesome people behind the scenes here at Codename. David, who built this setup and is going to build us another new setup. Erica, who co-produces the stream. So a huge thank you to both of you, and also another additional thank you to David for taking time this afternoon to join us. Now the schedule says that we have Waffle Talk coming up at 4, and I believe that Trapped in the Birdcage was postponed this week because like the entire cast is ill or something. So hopefully they feel better soon. But after that, Critical Role comes on at 7. So have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and yeah, take care.